Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay, ready? Thank you very much, Rishikesh. Good to see you. Good to see everybody here. We're going to have an interesting presentation this afternoon. It's about the history, basically of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but some of the other things related with Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Hare Krishna. Oh, our favorite chanter. Okay, so first we're going to chant Jai Radha Madhava. That's all right with all of you. And then we're going to talk about, timeline of some of the occurrences during the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And hopefully it won't take too long because there's a lot, 99 slides.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot to say in the narration, okay? So, everybody knows how to chant Jai Radha Madhava? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravanikacharya also Teta Satashi Shrimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chalanad Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nanagoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prince Say Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Majoram Ki Jai, Jagannathaswami Ki Jai, Namai Ki Jai, Shrimati Galasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya. Budale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauranga Jani Nivasesha Shunyavadi Paschat Charni. So Megana Timiranda Shagananjana Shlokaya Chakshur Unmeditam Gena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. So this afternoon we're going to talk about a brief history, hopefully it's brief, about the important events, the timeline in Vaishnavism, specifically Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but we're going to touch upon some of the other Sampradayas too. So of course, this is all by the mercy of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, without whose mercy we wouldn't know any of this. We would all be engaged in electrical engineering or some pursuit like that. Like some of you are engaged in, but anyway, I wouldn't be a sannyasi, that's for sure. So by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we can get some understanding, and of course he has brought us to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, this Hare Krishna movement, which was started by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu over 500 years ago. But this movement and the philosophy we're teaching comes back, or goes back a lot longer than that. It is eternal. It is called Sanatana Dharma. For those of you who don't know what Sanatana Dharma is, it's not a group. There's a group called the Sanatana Dharma people, but it's not a group. Sanatana is eternal. Dharma means the position or nature of the soul, the nature of God, the nature of the material world, and how to interact with all these different tattvas or elements. So, Lord Chaitanya's movement. So let's start a long time ago, eternally. Eternity, how about that? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's always been the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always will be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no origin. And Adir Adir Govinda Sarva Karanakarnam. He's the cause of all causes. So, in this world, Krishna teaches the philosophy of Sanatana Dharma basically to 4 different sampradayas, which you see here. There's the Brahma Sampradaya, the Rudra Sampradaya, Kumara Sampradaya, the Lakshmi Sampradaya. And there's different representatives of these sampradayas in the modern day and age. Of course, we in the Krishna Conscious Movement are members of the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. That means through Lord Rama and then through Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, in our Sampradaya, of course, the first person after Krishna, and I'm not going to give a date for this because I don't know the date. It's billions of years ago. BC 100 quadrillion billion years ago. I couldn't figure it out given my mathematical background. Anyway, it was a long time ago. So Lord Brahma was instructed by Krishna from within his heart, that is Lord Brahma's heart. And Lord Brahma didn't know anything when he was born, so he engaged in some austerity, hearing the transcendental words of Krishna, tapa tapa, and then he was instructed. He was born on a lotus flower. And so he passed this knowledge down to Narada Muni, which is also millions of years ago. I don't have the exact date for this. And then Narada Muni passed it down to his disciple, Srila Vyasadeva. And as we know, Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajar Shayo Vidhu, this knowledge is passed down in a simple succession. But let's get to something that's more modern, not so much modern. So about 3,227 BC, who appears? But Krishna. Now, sometimes we say he was born, but he's unborn. In other words, he's always existing, he's eternal, but he takes the pastimes of appearing to be born. Why does he do that? Well, we have this Parichanaya Sarunam Vinashaya Chatushkritam thing in the Bhagavad Gita. That he comes to annihilate the miscreants, protect the devotees, establish dharma, religious principles. But he comes to have a good time. Because all these things can be accomplished without him coming personally. So he comes personally just to enjoy different rasa or exchanges with his devotees, which we talked about last week as far as Lord Nrsimhadev. Because Krishna enjoys anger, Krishna enjoys humor, Krishna enjoys shock, all these different rasas, or indirect rasas, which we went into depth with last week. So, anyway, so Krishna appeared and he enjoyed with his associates approximately, I mean, there's some difference in calculation. Don't hold me to this exact date. But there's, people have different ways of calculating, but it was a long time ago. And then approximately 3,142 years before BCE, that was not before today, there was this wonderful war called the Kurukshetra War. And you all know about that. And if you don't know about it, read the Mahabharata. We're not going to give a class on the Kurukshetra War. And so when Krishna departed from this planet, something unfortunate happened that we are experiencing to this very day. What is that? Kali Yuga. And there you see everyone with their mobile phones and television and everything. We've got a lot of couch potatoes. I don't know if you know what a couch potato is. You know what it is? I don't know. You are one. Well, hopefully on the couch you're actually watching Krishna's stuff. Anyway. So, moving into the, after CE, we get to the appearance of Lord Buddha. Now, Lord Buddha appeared for a variety of reasons. One reason is the people were misusing the Vedic literatures to justify animal killing. And so Lord Buddha thought, he's an incarnation of Krishna, he thought we got to take people away from the Vedic literatures because they're using it for the wrong purpose. And also, people were using, that is the Brahmins, were using the Vedic literatures to lord it over everyone else, the caste distinction. Even though Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnamaya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. One is known of a particular caste or whatever, according to his qualities and work, or her qualities and work. And even if someone is of a caste like Shudra or Vaishya or something like that, they're still part and parcel of Krishna. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanevanu pashyati, right? Is Upanishad. The devotee sees everyone equally. We understand we have different types of bodies. That's fine. Just like I was walking here a few minutes ago, and I saw that some of you had nice cars, and some of you had not so nice cars. Right, there were some Mercedes there, I'm not going to mention the T word. It's not politically correct anymore. But some of you had different, and some of you had, whatever Dodges or whatever you have. not so nice cars. So, but I don't hate you. I don't consider you to be untouchable. I mean, just because you're driving a car that's 20 years old, that would be kind of stupid, isn't it? I still like you as much. Okay. So, Lord Buddha came because people were discriminating on the basis of what type of car they had. Not car, I'm talking about yantra, machine. Same thing. Krishna says, yantra rudani maya. Everyone isn't driving around in a machine. I have an old machine, you have a young machine. It's just a machine. And then we give up this machine, we take another machine, right? Or hopefully we don't take another machine. You know. So Buddha came to take people away from this misunderstanding of what the Vedas were teaching. And there were other religions that became prominent at that time, such as the Jain religion too. But they were all like rebellions against the improper Vedic teachings or the improper understanding of Vedic teachings. Okay, and so Buddha established Buddhism, and then you have Buddha disappeared in 483 BCE. And then, coming into the Common Era, we have the appearance of Shankaracharya. Of course, Shankaracharya taught something that generally we Hare Krishna devotees don't agree with. What is that? He taught impersonalism. He taught what's called Vivarta Vada. That's a technical word. That we're an illusion, actually just everything is one. Brahman is an illusion. Of course, he didn't explain how Brahman fell into illusion. And the reason he taught like that, he's actually an appearance of Lord Shiva. The reason he taught like that was to bring people back to the Vedic knowledge or accepting the Vedas, but they weren't ready to accept the Vedas, or at least the ultimate purpose of the Vedas, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Anyone know? 15:15? The whole purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna, but they weren't ready for that. They were, just too much into Buddhism. So what he taught was covered Buddhism, or a different variety of Buddhism. Most of the Buddhists at that time believed that everything ultimately is void. Of course, that's not what Buddha taught. I think I should be very clear about this. Buddha taught basically a psychological path. Material suffering, material world is suffering, suffering is caused by attachment. Give up the attachment, give up the suffering, which we all agree with. And then he taught the Eightfold Path after that. Anyway, Shankaracharya brought people back to the Vedic literatures, but not with the correct understanding. Some of the things he taught were true, like reincarnation and other things, but the ultimate nature of the absolute truth he didn't teach properly about, for a particular strategic purpose. And then he disappeared in 820 Common Era. Then we had someone who dealt with Shankaracharya's philosophy and tried to counteract the improper understanding. That is Sripad Ramanujacharya. And Sripad Ramanujacharya appeared in the year 1017. And he taught Vishishta Dvaita, purified oneness. So in other words, his teaching was very similar to what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, which is Ajincha Veda Veda, taught by everything is one and different simultaneously. In other words, we are one with the Lord by nature, quality, but we are different in quantity. We are different entities, eternally separate. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bhavanam Yo Vidadati Kam. There are many eternals, one supreme eternal, that's Krishna, and Krishna is two Bhagavan Swayam. He's a source of all the different incarnations. So Ramanujacharya taught this, and primarily he was teaching the worship of Krishna, or worship of God, or Narayan, in the mood of awe and reverence. He didn't teach about intimate exchanges, Radha and Krishna, and all the different things we learn about the Krishna conscious movement. He was just preparing the ground for the later teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So later on, so I said he appeared in 1017 and he disappeared in 1137. That's quite a long time on the earth. And this, what you see here is actually Ramanujacharya's body that's been preserved. And that's in Sri Rangam. I've been there several times. And they wrap the body, and there's also a deity of Ramanujacharya that he personally breathed onto to install the deity before he left this world. So in 1137 he left this world. Later on, another great acharya appeared. Now we're not going to talk about all four acharyas. We're not going to talk about Nimbarka or Vishnu Swami, but just some of the primary ones. So in 1238, Shripad Madhvacharya appeared. And Shripad Madhvacharya basically taught Shuddha Dvaita. That means purified good, duality. Yeah. And so then Shripad Madhvacharya primarily, he actually interacted with Srila Vyasadeva, and he showed Srila Vyasadeva his commentary on the Mahabharata and other Vedic literatures. And Shripad Madhvacharya discovered the deity of this deity he got in there was in some Gopi Chandan, and he installed the deity there in Udupi. So he disappeared in 1317. And so he is one of the main acharyas in our Gaudiya Madhava disciplic succession, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya disciplic succession. And then shortly after that, in 1420, a great acharya named Madhavendra Puri appeared. Now, some of you may be familiar with Madhavendra Puri. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered him to be the source of ecstatic love in our Sampradaya. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whenever he came in touch with someone who actually was absorbed in the intimate loving exchanges of Radha and Krishna and the other residents of Vrindavan with Krishna, he considered that person to have some connection with Madhavendra Puri. So Madhavendra Puri's spiritual master was Lakshmipati. And that Lakshmipati was actually the spiritual master of Lord Nityananda, who we'll hear about in a second. So Madhavendra Puri is famous because when he went to Vrindavan, he was not asking anyone for prasadam. Now that's actually a very high stage of sannyas, which fortunately I'm not at. I not only ask people for prasadam, but I make my own prasadams. Anyway, but a really advanced sannyasi won't ask anyone for prasadam. He'll just go to a place and preach, and if Krishna wants to give him something, he'll eat, and if Krishna doesn't want to give him something, he'll fast. And Madhavendra Puri was like that. He went to Vrindavan, and he wasn't eating, but he was chanting, and he was happy. Most of us, if we don't eat, we're not happy, and we can't chant. But he was chanting, and he was happy. And Krishna saw that he wasn't eating, and Krishna brought him some condensed milk. And he said, nobody fasts in our village. And he gave Madhavendra Puri this little pot of condensed milk. And of course, Madhavendra Puri didn't recognize him at that time. But later on, Madhavendra Puri had this dream. And in this dream, it was revealed to him that it was Krishna who brought him that condensed milk. And that Krishna's deity was hidden from the Muslims who had invaded the Vrindavan area, and that Madhavendra Puri had the duty to excavate and take the deity out and install him on top of Govardhan Hill. So we're going to hear a little bit about Madhavendra Puri later. So then, shortly after Madhavendra Puri appeared, we have the appearance of Advaitacharya, who was the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. That's in 1434. And shortly after that, so you see how the Lord is arranging for all of his associates to be born pretty much at similar times so they can interact with each other and carry out their pastimes. Then in 1437, we have the appearance of Lord Nityananda. At least that's the date given. And then in 1479, Madhavendra Puri, who we mentioned before, visited Govardhan Hill and Radhakund area. And then shortly after that, 1479, Madhavendra Puri establishes the worship of Gopal on the top of Govardhan Hill. And of course, Gopal is now worshipped as Srinathji in Nathdwar, because he was taken out of Vrindavan because the Mughals had attacked Vrindavan. So, then Advaitacharya in 1482 takes Diksha from Madhavendra Puri in Vrindavan. Interesting timeline. And then in 1483, we have the appearance of Lokanath Swami, who is an eternal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Both he and Bhugarbha Goswami, his associate, were sent to Vrindavan by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to prepare the ground for the other Goswamis, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, who would follow after some time. And then in 1486, guess who appeared? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So you see how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was arranging for all of his associates to appear before him. And then right after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, we have in 1487 the appearance of Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. So of course we know he is a member of the Panchatattva, and he is Shakti Tattva, considered to be an expansion of Srimati Radharani. So then right after that, it's interesting how all these different personalities appeared in sequence in exactly the right time. 1488, you have the appearance of Sanatan Goswami, the eldest of all the Goswamis in Vrindavan. Of course, he wasn't Sanatan Goswami when he appeared. Before he and his brother Rupa Goswami took up the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were known as Dabir Kas and Shakara Malak because they were working for the Muslim government. Then right after that, 1489, you have the appearance of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Prabhupada comments that we are known as Rupanugas because we are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami, particularly his one book, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Prabhupada considered to be our law book for the process of devotional service, because Srila Rupa Goswami is the Abhideya Acharya. Sanatana Goswami is the Sambandha Acharya, and Raghunath Das Goswami is the Prayojana Acharya. I'll explain what those words mean. Sambandha means basically to understand the basic philosophy, who we are, who God is, who Srimati Radharani is, what the material world is, and the relationship between them. Abhideya means what do you do about that? Or in other words, how to achieve spiritual perfection or to transcend this world. And Rupa Goswami teaches us how to do this in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Srila Prabhupada translated as the Nectar of Devotion. So that's Rupa Goswami. And then in 1491, Madhavendra Puri disappears from this world. And 1491, also, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's brother, Vishvarupa, took sannyas. And of course, when he took sannyas, Lord Chaitanya's parents got very, very nervous, thinking that Nimai is going to take sannyas, and because of that, they took him out of school. So that does not prevent someone from taking sannyas, taking him out of school. So anyways, they took him out of school because they thought this group learned too much about the nature of this world. Actually, Prabhupada said if you learn too much about Krishna consciousness, it'll spoil your material life. So better we don't, anyone who doesn't want to get their material life spoiled, then you just prashadam later. I mean, right now. Because once you, actually Bhagavatam says that, once you actually understand about Krishna, then you're going to be always thinking when you're engaged in, let's say, mundane affairs, I'm not the body. Every time you want to go water skiing or bungee jumping. Bungee jumping? You've done that? No. You should try. All right, so anytime you want to do anything, just to get some physical happiness, you're like, I'm not the body. I'm like, let me get that thought out of my mind. It's destroying my happiness. You know, you're going to pass away. Only material world's a place. Anyway, won't talk about that. So, they took Lord Chaitanya out of school. And Lord Chaitanya showed them that if you take me out of school, I'm going to do rascal things. One of the things he did is he would destroy people's crops in the fields. He would dress up in different ways, like put a sheet over his head and destroy their crops. I mean, he acted almost like a juvenile delinquent. Another thing he did was he sat on these rejected cooking pots, and he said to his mother, unless you teach me about what's pure and what's impure, then how am I going to understand these things? And actually, he also said, everything I touch is pure, which is true, because it's God. So that's 1491, and then eventually they sent Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu back to school, and he got educated. And then in 1494, this gives you an idea of when everyone was born. 1494, Raghunath Das Goswami appeared. In 1496, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami appeared. He was quite old. In 1503, Gopal Bhatta Goswami appeared. Gopal Bhatta Goswami, of course, was the acharya who taught us how to do deity worship. Particularly, we know the story of how Radha Raman appeared to him from one of his shilas. And then, in 1505, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami appeared. And in 1509, Lokanath Goswami, we mentioned previously, and Bhugarva Goswami arrived in Vrindavan to prepare the grounds for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, to go there. And then in 1510, Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, and he traveled, of course, over South India and to Vrindavan, and especially resided in Jagannath Puri. Now, it wasn't until later, until Jiva Goswami appeared, 1513, the youngest of the Goswamis. And then in 1515, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited Vrindavan, discovered Radhakund and some of the other holy places there. And in 1516, Rupa and Sanatan came to Vrindavan. Of course, they also visited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, going to Jagannath Puri during that time. And then one of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates in 1516, Prabhupada Saraswati Goswami, who was the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, came to Vrindavan. He's the author of many, many literatures. And then in the next generation of devotees, after the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan started to appear, you had 1517, Srinivasacharya appeared, and Srinivasacharya is renowned because he was instrumental in spreading Krishna consciousness in Bengal. Now, of course, we know Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in Bengal, but he sent the 6 Goswamis to Vrindavan to write various literatures about Bhakti Yoga, especially Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami and the other Goswamis. And Jiva Goswami sent Srinivasacharya later on to preach and expand Krishna consciousness in a dynamic way in Bengal, and Srinivasacharya was the one who gave initiation to a great king named Bir, who made it obligatory. It's an interesting story. He made it obligatory for everyone in his kingdom to chant their rounds. He had spies. Nowadays, of course, we use webcams and things like that to spy on the devotees. But anyway, just like we have our cameras here, and there's facial recognition. So, anyways, it's an interesting story that I'm reading a biography right now about all these great saints. But King Bir, once upon a time, sent a spy around his kingdom, and he discovered the spy was listening to a Brahmin complaining to his wife. The Brahmin said to his wife said, "Don't you want to take prasadam tonight?" And he says, "I have to finish my rounds first, because I've been working so hard all day long and struggling. Oh, it's really hard, but because the king will actually give me trouble unless I finish my rounds." Imagine that. So, the whole kingdom was like that. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing. So the spy reported back to the king. This devotee is having trouble finishing his rounds because he's working too hard. So the king said, "Bring him here." Don't worry, there's a happy ending to the story. So the king said, "Bring him here, I want to speak to him." So this man went before the king, and he said, "I heard you're having trouble finishing your rounds because you're working too hard." And he said, "Yes." And the king said, "All right, I'm going to give you more land so you won't have to work, and people to help you so you won't have to work too hard so you can finish your rounds." Nice story, isn't it? Nice story. He wasn't just heavy out the guy, "You got to finish your rounds," like that. So Srinivasacharya, he was instrumental in many ways in making sure that all of Bengal became Christian. Also Shaimananda was instrumental in Orissa. Shaimananda and also his disciple Rasikananda. We're not going to talk about Rasikananda now, but there's a lot of information about Rasikananda. And then shortly after that, Narottama Das Thakur appeared. And Narottama Das Thakur is also the friend of Srinivasacharya and Shaimananda. And he was instrumental in putting in the philosophy and the bhava of Krishna consciousness into modern Bengali, at that time modern Bengali, not modern Bengali now, but the Bengali vernacular. In other words, Bengali that everyone could understand. In his beautiful poems, like Prarthana, so many nice poems he wrote. And in the Krishna conscious movement, we chant every day some of his poems as part of our regular practice, like the Guru prayers that we chant in the morning. So that's Narottama Das Thakur appeared in 1520. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu disappeared in 1534. The reason I have the deities there, that's the Tota Gopinath deity. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered into the Tota Gopinath deity. And to this day, if you ask the Pujari to see the place where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered the deity's thigh, there's a golden streak there. So that's how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left this world. And Narottama Das Thakur appeared in 1534. And it wasn't until 1535 till Raghunath Das Goswami arrived in Vrindavan. Now that's right after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the planet, because Raghunath Das Goswami, amongst the 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan, he was the one who had the most, let's say, personal, well, everything was personal, but the most time with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he was able to remember all these different pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and recite these pastimes to the other Goswamis of Vrindavan, and particularly to Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami, who wrote the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that's why we have so much direct information about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes with biographies, you have a lot of exaggeration. That's called hagiography, for those of you who want learn a big word. Hagiography means, sometimes with biographies of saints, they exaggerate things or make up stories or add miracles to make it seem like it's more fantastic. But with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's biography, everything is very factual, because Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami had direct access to Raghunath Das Goswami, also direct access to Swarup Damodar Goswami's diary, which Raghunath Das Goswami brought with him. So, in this particular picture you see here, Raghunath Das Goswami is chanting, and he's being protected from the tigers by Krishna, and protected from the sun by Srimati Radharani. And because of that, he was chastised by Sanatana Goswami and told he had to build a kutir. That's how austere he was. So, then finally, 1535, Jiva Goswami comes to Vrindavan. Of course, Jiva Goswami is famous because he is the most erudite scholar amongst all of Vaishnavas. And he's famous for many literatures, particularly the Shashandavas, which deal with all the different aspects of Krishna consciousness, beginning with epistemology, which means how do you know what you know. So that's Srila Jiva Goswami. Of course, is famous also in another book, that's Gopal Champu, which deals with more explanations of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and outside of Vrindavan. And then in 1541, Lord Nityananda disappeared from this world. And it wasn't until 1541 till the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was completed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Hope everyone's following this. In 1545, Raghunath Das Goswami excavated Radha Kund and Shama Kund, and the excavation was finished in 1554. Then in 1558, Sanatana Goswami disappeared from this world. And right after that, same year, Advaita Charya disappeared. Advaita Charya lived for quite a long time in this world. And then Rupa Goswami disappeared. So gradually the 6 Goswamis were disappearing from this world. And Jiva Goswami, who was the youngest of all the Goswamis of Vrindavan, met the Emperor Akbar, who was renowned for his liberality. And so Akbar and others who were associated with him helped build some of the temples in Vrindavan. So in 1571, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami disappears. And in 1575, the Chaitanya Bhagavat was completed by Vrindavan Das Thakur. That's the other authoritative biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And 1576, Jiva Goswami was appointed as the Mahant of Radha Kund. Now you may ask, why wasn't Raghunath Das Goswami appointed as the Mahant of Radha Kund? Because Raghunath Das Goswami, having come from a very, very wealthy family, did not want to take any managerial responsibility. So the whole managerial responsibility of Radha Kund was put in the hands of Srila Jiva Goswami, and all the deeds and everything have the signature of Srila Jiva Goswami. And then 1578, Gopal Bhatta Goswami disappeared. And it wasn't till later, this is interesting, way after Sanatana Goswami disappeared, that the Madan Mohan temple was built and opened. So many of the temples of the Goswamis actually were finished after the Goswamis passed away from this world. Although the deities were being worshipped by them before, the temples actually were established later. So in 1581, the Chaitanya Charitamrita was completed by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, and this Chaitanya Charitamrita, of course, is available for anyone who wants to purchase it. In 1582, right after he completed it, he disappeared. He was very old, in his 90s, and he was writing this amazing literature about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that he could hardly see, and he was trembling but so dedicated to the memory of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was personally sent down by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to write the most authoritative biography and philosophical exposition about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then right after that, from 1583, Raghunath Das Goswami disappeared. This is his samadhi there, you see in Radhakund. And then 1585, Lokanath Goswami disappeared. So all these devotees were disappearing one after the other. But the Radha Govinda temple was not open until 1590. Interesting. Of course, we understand that later on the top stories of the Radha Govinda temple were torn down by this horrible person, Aurangzeb. We'll mention him in a second. In 1608, Jiva Goswami disappeared. And in 1611, Narottama Das Thakur disappeared. So all these associates are disappearing one after the other. There's going to be a real problem. And 1630, Shaimananda Pandit disappeared. And to rectify what was happening at that time, there were so many deviant sects arising. We have the appearance of this great Acharya, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in 1638. And his amazing disciple, his Siksha disciple, in the late 1600s, Baladeva Vijayabhushana also appeared. And of course, Baladeva Vijayabhushana is famous for writing this literature called the Govinda Bhasha. I'll tell you the story about that, hopefully, real quickly. The Govinda Bhasha means the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra that was spoken by Govindaji. So why do we say the commentary on Vedanta Sutra was spoken by Govindaji? Well, a very easy explanation is that Govindaji, that is Radha Govinda, were taken to Jaipur, actually in a place near Jaipur called Gaza or something, Gala. What's this? I can't read that. Galta, which is right next to Jaipur, that's right. Galta, which is right next to Jaipur. And while they were there, the king of Jaipur was being influenced by this other group of devotees called the Ramanandis. And they said, you should not worship Radharani with Krishna. And they took the Radharani deity, they influenced the king to take the Radharani deity and put the Radharani deity in a different location. And so this was a misunderstanding of the philosophy. And so, therefore, they called for Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to come to this Jaipur area, Galta, to try to rectify the situation. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was too old, so he sent his disciple, Baladeva Vijayabhushana. And he had this argument, he defeated them. However, they said, you have no commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Where is the Gaudiya commentary in the Vedanta Sutra? Because without a commentary in the Vedanta Sutra, nobody will accept your sampradaya. So, Baladeva Vijayabhushana said the Bhagavatam is our commentary, which is true. But they didn't accept that. And they said, we want to see a specific Gaudiya commentary. So he said, give me a few days, I'll produce it. So he prayed to the Govindaji deity. The Govindaji deity dictated from the heart to Baladeva Vijayabhushana. He was able to write this commentary, and as a result, Radha and Govinda were brought back together. It's a happy story. So Baladeva Vijayabhushana is a very, very important person in our Sampradaya for establishing that we are a Bodhava. The Gaudiya aspect of the Gaudiya branch of the Brahma Sampradaya is completely bona fide. Very, very important person. As a man in 1670, you have this horrible person, Aurangzeb, attacking Vrindavan and killing so many devotees, destroying temples all over India, actually, not just in Vrindavan. Unfortunately, in India, they named so many streets after him. Yeah, even a town, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, just think about it. That's crazy. I mean, no matter what religion you are, it's just like in Germany if they name different streets Hitler Avenue. Can you imagine that? I mean, all of you people from India should demand that they eliminate all these names. It's not against any religion. He's a terrible ogre, whatever, demon. He killed people of his own religion. It's amazing. How can that happen in India, isn't it? That you name streets Hitler Avenue, Kamsa Street, Ranikasi Town. What are people thinking about, isn't it? I don't know. So, Aurangzeb, anyway. So the devotees, many of the deities were moved to Jaipur, Udaipur, and Natwar as a result of that. And then in 1708, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur disappeared, and 1768, quite a long time after that, Baladev Vidyabhushan disappeared. And so for a long time, there was a deficit. We needed more acharyas to reestablish the authenticity of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, because whenever great acharyas disappear, so many rascals come out. And that means Apasampradayas, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the next great acharya, helped to rectify the situation. So that was in 1838, Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared, and then in the same year, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj appeared. Interesting. And then in 1874, we're short on time, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared as a result of the prayers of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to the Supreme Personality of Godhead to send his right-hand man to rectify the situation. So then, 1874, but then shortly after that, who appeared? 1896, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada appeared. We'll get to Srila Prabhupada in a second. In 1914, Bhaktivinoda Thakur disappeared. And in 1915, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj disappeared. In 1922, getting to the modern age, Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master in Calcutta and got his mission at that time, that you were an educated young boy, you should preach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission in English and in the Western world. And it wasn't until 1933 until Srila Prabhupada actually took initiation in Allahabad. And in 1935, Srila Prabhupada met with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in Radhakund and got the instruction that if you ever get any money, you should print and distribute books. And Srila Prabhupada was there with his young son. And so then in 1936, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur disappeared. In 1954, Srila Prabhupada took Vanaprastha, and of course was distributing his Back to Godhead magazine in Delhi and other places. In 1956, Srila Prabhupada arrived in Vrindavan, and in 1959, Srila Prabhupada took sannyas and began to publish his monumental set of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and was able to publish 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, with great endeavor, practically not eating at all, and just personally bringing the paper to the printer, personally reviewing everything, personally editing everything, doing everything. And in 1965, Srila Prabhupada was ready to come to America, and he boarded the Jaladuta. And then in 1966, Srila Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON in New York. In 1975, Prabhupada opened the Krishna Balaram Mandir. This is one of the main activities. Of course, Srila Prabhupada opened 108 temples around the world in the space of 10 or 11 years. Practically single-handedly, with the help of devotees who were sent by Krishna to assist him. Because it's amazing that so many devotees came in such a short period of time. And many of the devotees, talking about how Krishna arranges everything, many of the devotees actually were born at a similar time. And anyway, it was all arranged by Krishna. And then in 1977, Srila Prabhupada disappeared from this world. And then Srila Prabhupada asked that his disciples form the governing body commission and manage his society, and the society is growing by leaps and bounds to this very day. So this is a brief history of our branch of the Sampradaya. So does anyone have any questions or comments? Actually, we finished it all. Yes?
I noticed in multiple places over there that the gurus disappear from the world, and then much later the disciple appears in the world. Like, how does it make sense that the disciple appears after?
Who is it? Which ones?
I think it was like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushan maybe.
Baladev Vidyabhushan was in the world at the same time as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But yeah, there's obviously spiritual masters in the chain of disciplic succession that I didn't mention.
Yes.
So, but Baladev if we go back to Baladev Vidyabhushan, he was there in the world at the same time as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur.
Well, I did notice some places that it was like that.
Well, can you give me another example?
I don't remember right now.
Okay, well, you can tell me later.
Okay.
We go through the whole list. I mean, it's possible I typed the wrong dates in certain places, because I just put this together today. And the dates are very approximate, especially when we're dealing with any of the, other than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, any of the previous acharyas and previous dates are very, very approximate. And even with Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushan, these dates are approximate.
Okay.
Yeah, these dates are very approximate. Yes?
Speaking of gaps in time, could you describe a little the meeting of Madhvacharya and Vyasadeva?
Oh, okay. So Vyasadeva, of course, that appears to be a big gap in time, because Vyasadeva is there in Badrikashram, and he's still there in Badrikashram, but he's in a place called Uttara Badari. Uttara means top Badari. So Madhvacharya, he's still there today, just like Hanuman is in Kimpurusha Loka. So Madhvacharya is the son of the wind, Vayuputra, even though he has a mother and father in this earth planet, but he's actually Vayuputra. So he's able to do, or was able to do, amazing things. In fact, he was able to sometimes even like almost fly through the air. So he went to visit Srila Vyasadeva to show him his commentary, various commentaries. He went twice to see Srila Vyasadeva. And one of his followers, I think his name was Satyatirtha, wanted to follow him up to see Uttarabhadri, you see Srila Vyasadeva. And he wasn't able to follow him, and Madhvacharya just like waved at him and had him fly back through the air to the base camp of the mountain. So Madhvacharya was able, by his great strength, mystic power, whatever, to go to Uttarabhadri and see Srila Vyasadeva. So in this way, there's the link there between Madhvacharya and Srila Vyasadeva, even though Srila Vyasadeva has been there for maybe thousands or millions of years, or thousands of years at least, because Srila Vyasadeva appeared during the time when Krishna was present, actually. So,
is there a record of the conversation between Madhvacharya and
Record in terms of,
what they say to each other?
not that I,
That was a historic meeting.
it was an historic meeting, but only two of them were there. Yeah, I'm not sure if Ganesh was there too, but I do know it was the two of them, and none of the disciples of Madhvacharya were able to go. So this is based on what Madhvacharya said. So, any other questions? Questions, comments? Yes, Rishikesh.
The Bhaktivinoda Thakur came after like 100 years after he came like after a long time. Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared
What?
almost like after 100 years before the first previous Acharya.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't fill in all the different spiritual masters there in between the different personalities. These are just the prominent persons. There's obviously a whole chain of disciplic succession there, and other spiritual masters who initiated different devotees up to the time of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So that I didn't mention. I just mentioned the most prominent persons as far as we're concerned. So there are, in other words, there's no Ritvik acharyas there. For those of you who don't know what a Ritvik acharya is, anyone know what a Ritvik acharya is? Means there are no instances of someone taking initiation from an acharya who already left the planet. That's called the Ritvik philosophy. Actually, the word Ritvik literally means an officiating priest. Ritviks are all right. I mean, the people who do the fire sacrifice, they're considered Ritviks. However, you cannot take initiation from someone who's not on the planet. Why? Several different reasons. One reason is that the guru has a right to say no. It would be like, all right, let's say you love a Bollywood actress, right? Right? So can you get married to her because there's a representative of her here? Can you? Let's say you want to marry Rani Mukherjee. Or you ladies want to marry Vivek Oberoi. So proxy, you have a picture, you go in front of Vivek, and you say, do you accept me? And I know you do. And I love you too. I don't think it would work like that. So accepting initiation from a guru who is not on the planet doesn't work. You can accept siksha, instruction, obviously. So, that's the Ritvik philosophy. Also, there's other reasons too that you can't really, it's just not part of a sampradaya. It's not the authorized methodology. Because if you do that, then you can do anything you want without any checks and balances. So, any other questions or comments? Yes,
It was a wonderful class. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
thank you.
Just to hear the flow of acharyas of the time, that was
Yeah.
very wonderful. So, in regards to Madhvacharya, is it that Madhvacharya went to greater Himalayas, the one that divides Kim Purusha Loka and Bharatavarsha? Is that what you are?
I didn't quite get the question. He went to the Himalayas.
The greater Himalayas as the Bharatavarsha, which separates the Kim Purusha. Is that what you are?
I don't know the exact way he got there. If I did, I'd probably go myself. All I know is he went to Uttara Badri. As far as the map, the Google Maps, doesn't show up. So, that, maybe one of you have more information about that than I do. Okay, I guess that's it. Time for Prashadam. Thank you very much. All glories to His Divine Grace. Srila Prabhupada. by whose mercy we are connected with this great chain of spiritual masters.
Just one few announcements. Before we came, is there anyone for the first time, other than anyone, those who already